Imagine this. You've just wrapped up a massive investigation. You write the report, breathe a sigh of relief, and you think you're done. But what if that one document, that single report, had to be read by a lawyer, an HR director, and a police detective? Today, we're going to break down the secret to writing one report that works for three completely different, high-stakes audiences.
Just take a second and really think about that. What if the report you poured all that time and energy into had to be read by a lawyer whose only job, literally their only job, is to scan every single word you wrote, looking for anything that could trigger a $1 million lawsuit? Or how about an HR director? They don't care about the legal stuff, not really. They just need to know if there's enough solid proof in your report to fire someone, based strictly on company policy.
And then, what if that same report ends up on a detective's desk? Now, they're looking for cold, hard evidence to build a criminal case. All of a sudden, every single word you chose has potentially life-changing consequences.
So how in the world do you pull this off? Well, it all comes down to one absolutely critical concept: understanding your end user. If you can get this right, you are going to write a powerful, effective, and, most importantly, safe report every single time.
So, what is the end user? It's the person who will be the final reader of your report. It might not even be the person who hired you, but it's the person whose specific goals and needs have to shape every single sentence you write. You're writing for them.
Okay, let's see how this works in the real world. Let's start with our first persona, the lawyer. When your report hits their desk, their entire world shrinks down to just two things: protection and privilege. Their goal is simple. It's absolute: risk management and protection. That's it. Forget the exciting narrative of your investigation. They are reading your report like a surgeon, just scanning for any vulnerability, any weakness. To them, every word is either a shield that protects the company or a weapon that can be used against. So this really breaks down into three key questions they're asking. First, admissibility. Was all this information gathered legally? Second, liability. Is there anything in here, anything that exposes the company to a lawsuit? And third, tone. Is the report clinical, precise, and totally free of emotion? They want dry facts, not drama. Now this phrase right here is your best friend. It's your legal shield. Stamping every single page with confidential, attorney work product, or attorney-client privileged is a huge deal. It's basically a legal move to try and keep your report out of the hands of the opposing side's lawyers during a lawsuit. Think of it as your first line of defense.
Okay, let's totally switch gears. We're moving from the world of legal risk to internal company policy. Your report now goes to the Director of Human Resources, and trust me, their universe is completely different.
For HR, the goal is what's called administrative action. To put it simply, they're reading your report with one question in mind: does this give us what we need to discipline or maybe even terminate an employee? The stakes here are incredibly personal and all about procedure.
So what does HR need from you? First, clear policy violations. Did the person actually break a specific rule in the company's code of conduct? You got to be specific. Second, clarity. You have to write for someone who isn't an investigator, no jargon. And finally, a big dose of caution. Remember, HR files can be brought out in lawsuits, so you have to avoid any speculation or personal bias.
And this slide is the perfect example of why that clarity matters so much. Look at the left. Subject made a heat check. An HR manager reads that and thinks, what on earth is a heat check? It's confusing jargon. Now look at the right. Subject drove erratically to detect surveillance. See? It's clear, it's precise, and it's something they can actually act on. That's the level of simplicity you're aiming for.
All right, on to our third and final audience. And with this one, the stakes just jumped from corporate to criminal. You are now packaging your findings for the police, and you need to give them nothing but the facts they need to build a case. The goal here couldn't be more straightforward: prosecution. All of those corporate concerns, company policy, HR issues, all of that just vanishes. The only questions left are, was a crime committed and can we prove it?
Law enforcement is looking for three specific things. First, the elements of the crime. Does your evidence actually prove what the law defines as theft or trespass or whatever the crime is? Second, identification. Can you prove exactly who did it? And third, chain of custody. This is a big one. Can you account for every piece of evidence, every step of the way, with zero gaps?
This table shows you the absolute best way to structure your report for the police. Don't give them a long story, give them a map. On the left, you list the evidence,
video of entry without a key. And on the right, you say exactly what it proves, trespass. You're literally connecting the dots for them, linking your findings directly to the elements of a crime. It makes their job so much easier. So, we've talked about the lawyer, HR, and the police, but you know what? There are some rules that apply to every single report, no matter who the end user is. Let's quickly go over the universal mistakes you have to avoid.
Rule number 1, and this is non-negotiable: zero humor or sarcasm. It can be so tempting to write something like the example on the left. The genius decided to hide the goods, but if that gets read in a courtroom, it makes you sound biased and totally unprofessional. Just stick to the facts, like the version on the right. The subject placed the items in a transparent backpack. It's factual, it's neutral, and it's safe.
Yeah, we touched on this with HR, but it is a universal rule. Avoid jargon at all costs. Using terms like unsub or perp might make you sound like a character on a TV show, but in a real report, it's unprofessional and can really confuse a jury. Always stick to simple, neutral language like individual or subject. And finally, what happens if your report has to go to someone else entirely, like, say, an insurance adjuster? Well, you sanitize it. For example, your original report might name a source. Informant John Smith said, but to protect that person, you create a new, redacted version that just says, a confidential source said. You're sharing the facts they need while protecting your confidential sources and methods.
So at the end of the day, writing a report isn't just about writing down what happened. It's about strategic communication. Every single word you choose has weight, and every sentence has a potential consequence. So the next time you sit down to write anything important, ask yourself this one simple question. Your words have power. Who are you really writing for?